I left the room with Catherine still sitting there, confused by my unexpectedly mature reaction. Deep down, I knew that her request for space was just the first act of a play she had already scripted in her head. But this time, I wasn't going to follow the script she expected. During the first week in the apartment, I got a call from Tom, my childhood friend. His wife was close to Catherine and had information that confirmed my suspicions. Michael, the ex from high school, had recently gotten divorced and reached out to Catherine on Facebook. According to Tom, they started off exchanging casual messages about old memories. Soon, the conversations turned into secret late-night virtual meetups. Catherine would recount her history with Michael to her friends, romanticizing the relationship they had in their teens and questioning her life choices. I found out that she'd been telling her circle about how Michael made her feel alive again. She talked about the butterflies in her stomach when she got his messages and how he understood her in a way that, according to her, I never could. The truth hurt, but I didn't let it break me. Instead of confronting her, I decided to use this information to my advantage. I realized I was dealing with a fantasy. Catherine wasn't just reconnecting with Michael. She was trying to relive her youth, chasing that thrill of first love. Tom also mentioned that they had already met in person twice, at a cafe downtown. Catherine told her friends those meetings were innocent, just to catch up. But the photos they exchanged and the constant messages suggested something else. The most revealing part was finding out that Michael had booked a weekend at a nearby resort for the two of them, for a month later. Catherine hadn't given a definite answer yet, but she was seriously considering it, using our pause as an excuse. This information could have crushed me, but instead, it only strengthened my resolve. I realized I wasn't losing a loyal wife, but someone who had decided to betray our story long before asking for space. Rather than confront her or try to stop the inevitable, I decided to focus my energy on myself. If she wanted to relive the past with Michael, I was going to build a better future for me, alone. I set up a strict routine in my new space. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m. and start my day with an hour at the gym. My personal trainer, Marcus, became not only a physical guide, but also a confidant who helped channel my frustration into determination. I stopped checking Catherine's social media or asking about her. Instead, I devoted myself to a project I'd put off for years, writing a book on financial management. The evenings I used to spend watching TV with her were now filled with research and writing. I signed up for a photography course on Saturdays, something Catherine always dismissed as a waste of time. I started attending a business group that met for tennis on Sunday mornings. My social circle naturally expanded without any forced effort. I hired a personal stylist who completely revamped my wardrobe. I retired the baggy blazers and ill-fitting pants. I learned about colors, fabrics, and styles that enhanced my appearance. It wasn't just about clothes. It was about presenting myself to the world as the man I was becoming. I invested in therapy, not to save my marriage, but to understand my patterns and grow emotionally. Dr. Sarah helped me see how I'd lost part of my identity over the years, always putting Catherine's needs before my own. At work, I took on more challenging projects. I pitched a restructuring proposal that impressed the board, earning me a promotion I'd had within reach for years, but never actively pursued because I'd been too comfortable in my marriage. I started meditating every morning, developing an inner peace that surprised me. The initial anger was replaced by a deeper understanding. Catherine wasn't the villain. We were just two people headed in different directions. The apartment, which was once just a temporary space, turned into a refuge. I redecorated with the help of an interior designer, creating an environment that reflected my new identity. Every element was chosen by me, for me. I kept my contact with Catherine to a minimum, replying to her messages politely, but never showing any urgency or emotional need. When she asked for a conversation, I calmly said I was focused on my personal growth. People began to notice the changes. Co-workers commented on my new, more confident demeanor. Mutual friends were surprised by my transformation. But what mattered most was how I felt. Stronger, more centered, and, ironically, more whole than ever. This strategy wasn't about revenge or manipulation. It was about recognizing my worth and taking control of my life back. While Catherine was busy living a fantasy with Michael, I was building a solid reality rooted in genuine growth and self-discovery. Every day, the initial pain of abandonment lessened, replaced by a sense of gratitude. That space she had asked for, which once seemed like a death sentence for our marriage, turned into an opportunity for my personal rebirth. 3 months passed, and my physical transformation became impossible to ignore. I lost 15 kilos, gained muscle, and my posture completely changed. The personal trainer didn't just teach me exercises. He taught me a new way to carry myself. My face became more defined with the weight loss. I let my beard grow, keeping it neatly trimmed as advised by the professional barber I started going to. I adopted a new haircut, till my 15-year marriage fell apart on a typical Tuesday night. While Catherine was making dinner, I noticed her phone buzzing persistently on the kitchen table. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for that smile she kept trying to hide every time she checked her messages. We were the couple everyone admired. Sunday family dinners, trips planned well in advance, and that connection that only years together can build. At least, that's what I thought. The little signs were there. Her nights out with the girls got more frequent, our conversations got shorter, and that sparkle in her eyes when she talked to me slowly faded away. The week before, Catherine started putting a password on her phone. It was subtle, but for someone who shared a lifetime together, that little change sounded like a blaring alarm. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. Catherine's behavior with her phone changed every day. She even started taking it to the bathroom, something she'd never done before. During dinner, she'd always turn it face down, but her eyes would constantly drift to the screen whenever it lit up for a moment. One night, while she was in the shower, I noticed a notification pop up. It wasn't my habit to check her messages, but something at that moment pushed me to look. The name Michael appeared on the screen, along with the beginning of a message that said, "I miss our..." The rest was hidden. My heart started racing, but I kept my cool. Over the next few days, I watched her smile at her phone during breakfast, saw her typing furiously when she thought I was distracted by the TV, and noticed how she always stepped away to take calls. The whispered conversations in the backyard became more frequent, always cutting off abruptly whenever I came near. On a Saturday morning, Catherine forgot to close Instagram before leaving her phone on the table. I saw she was following a new profile, Michael Sullivan. A quick search revealed he was her high school boyfriend. Old photos of the two of them were still there, stored in a digital album that she'd recently started liking. The worst part wasn't discovering the messages or the profile, but realizing how hard she tried to hide it all. Goodbye kisses became mechanical, our conversations superficial, and that closeness we once had was replaced by an awkward silence punctuated by notification sounds. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. The moment I dreaded finally came on a Thursday night. Catherine sat on the edge of our bed, her hands nervously smoothing out the comforter, and said the words many men fear to hear. "Will, I need some space. Time to think." At that moment, something changed inside me. Years ago, I would have begged, cried, or tried to convince her to stay. But this time, a surprising calm took over me. I looked at her and simply replied, "I understand. If that's what you want, I'll respect it." The look of shock on her face was clear. She expected tears, promises of change, or even an angry argument. Instead, I kept my voice firm and controlled. "You're right. Maybe it's best we really take this time to reflect." Catherine started giving confused explanations about feeling suffocated, about needing to rediscover who she was. She talked about routines, necessary changes, about personal growth, but I knew those words were just a smokescreen for something deeper. As she spoke, I began planning my next steps. I wasn't going to be the desperate husband who calls nonstop or sends messages begging for attention. I decided that if she wanted space, I'd give her plenty of it. That very night, I packed a few clothes and essentials. I told her I was temporarily moving to the apartment we kept rented as an investment. Once again, her expression betrayed her shock. She expected me to stay, to beg, or to visibly suffer. "You don't have to leave home," she said, her voice trembling slightly. But I had already made up my mind. "It's for the best," I replied. "If we're giving each other time, let it really be time." Hat suited my more angular face. The clothes I bought earlier were now too loose. I built a new, complete wardrobe, this time investing in high-quality pieces. I learned the importance of a good tailor and how small adjustments can completely transform the look of an outfit. My skin significantly improved thanks to a skincare routine recommended by a dermatologist. Balanced eating and regular physical activity brought back a natural glow that I'd long lost. The stress of those early weeks was replaced by a serene expression. At work, my transformation made a big impact. The promotion placed me in a more visible role, and my new appearance matched perfectly with a leadership position. Presentations to the board, which used to cause anxiety, turned into standout moments. I started getting invited to important social events. At one of them, I met Sarah, a successful architect who showed interest in my book project. We exchanged a few professional messages, but I kept clear boundaries. I wasn't ready for any romantic involvement. Playing tennis became more than just a hobby. I joined a local tournament and, to my surprise, made it to the quarterfinals. The competition taught me valuable lessons about persistence and strategy that I applied in other areas of life. My once dormant Instagram account came back to life with the photos I started posting of my photography projects. They weren't selfies or attention-seeking shots, but artistic works that showed my growth in the field. The apartment turned into a space that reflected my new identity. I set up a minimalist office for writing, a meditation area with a city view, and a cozy social space for the new friends I made. People who had known me for years couldn't believe the change. It wasn't just the physical transformation. It was the energy I exuded, the natural confidence I had developed, and the inner peace that shone through in every interaction. One day, during a therapy session, Dr. Sarah remarked on how my body language had changed. I wasn't the slumped guy from our first sessions anymore. I sat up straight, spoke clearly, and radiated a confidence that came from within. This physical transformation was just the outer reflection of a much deeper change. Every toned muscle represented a battle won against self-pity. Every new piece of clothing symbolized letting go of old patterns. Every compliment confirmed I was on the right track, not to win Catherine back, but to win myself over. Catherine's friends started noticing and talking about my changes. At a corporate event, I ran into Laura, her best friend, who couldn't hide her astonishment when she saw me. "William, you're different," she stuttered, her eyes roaming over my new look. The next day, I got a message from Claire, another close friend of Catherine, asking if I'd be at the office happy hour. It was the first time in years that someone from her circle showed interest in my life separately. During the happy hour, I noticed people giving me sidelong glances and whispering. The same women who barely noticed me before were now finding reasons to start a conversation. Jennifer, who worked in the same building as Catherine, spent the whole afternoon snapping casual photos of the group, always including me in the frames. Social media played its part. My photos from the tennis tournament and corporate events started circulating in WhatsApp groups. Tracy, Catherine's cousin, liked all my recent posts and left complimentary comments, something she'd never done before. At a business meeting, I ran into Susan, an old friend of the couple. She couldn't contain her curiosity and directly asked about the separation. I kept the conversation brief and professional, though I could tell she was eager to pass every detail on to Catherine. The buzz grew when I was photographed at a fancy restaurant during a business dinner with investors. Emma, one of Catherine's co-workers, happened to be there and didn't waste any time snapping pictures, coincidentally including me in the background of her shots. The gossip about my transformation reached Catherine through various sources. Each friend had a new tidbit to share: how I was dressing, the places I was going, the people I was talking to. My new routine became constant talk at the Sunday lunches among her friends. Some defended Catherine, while others questioned her decision to ask for time. The question lingered: had she made a mistake? At a charity event, where several mutual acquaintances were present, my impromptu speech caused a buzz. Rachel, the event organizer and a longtime friend of Catherine, couldn't stop praising me throughout the night. Comparisons between my current behavior and Michael's, which some of her friends had met, became inevitable. While he remained the same guy from high school, I had transformed into someone completely new and captivating. The climax came when Diana, the most outspoken among them, bumped into me at the gym. After a long chat, she admitted that many of them questioned Catherine's decision, especially seeing how maturely and transformatively I handled the situation. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. The same people who once saw me only as Catherine's husband were now looking at me as an interesting, successful man. Yet I kept a distant and polite stance, never using this newfound attention to hurt Catherine. My transformation wasn't about her, it was about me. Attempts at reconciliation began subtly. Catherine started sending me what seemed like casual messages, reminiscing about our past. "I thought of you today while passing by the restaurant where we had our first date," one message said. Soon, her messages became more frequent. She began creating excuses to reach out, asking about documents I already had or banking issues that she could handle on her own. Every message ended with an invitation to continue the conversation, but I kept my replies objective and courteous. One day, I got a call from her at 11 p.m. Her voice was choked up, mixing apologies with confused explanations about missing me. I listened patiently, but maintained the emotional boundaries I'd set. "Catherine, it's late. We can talk about this another time when you're calmer. Her advances intensified after she found out, through her friends, about my success at work. She started showing up coincidentally in the same places I frequented. At the cafe near the office, at the gym, even at the restaurant where I usually had lunch. During a corporate event, she appeared without warning, wearing that red dress I'd always admired. She tried initiating several conversations, trying to reconnect through shared memories. I stayed polite but distant, talking more with other guests than with her. Catherine began canceling her meetings with Michael. Her friends told me that she was constantly talking about our history, about how she'd made a mistake, and how I was different now. The fantasy of teenage love was starting to lose its glow compared to the reality she was letting slip away. She tried to set up a dinner so we could talk about us. When I replied that I didn't see the need, she began crying on the phone, saying she was sorry and that she realized how important I was. I stuck to my position, suggesting she seek professional help to handle her emotions. In a bolder move, she showed up at my new apartment unannounced, with a bottle of my favorite wine. "We need to try again, Will. Look what we built together," she pleaded. Gently but firmly, I asked her to respect my space. The breaking point came when she sent me a long, handwritten letter, detailing every special moment from our marriage and admitting her mistakes. The letter ended with an apology and a promise to rebuild. Years ago, those words might have moved me. Now, they only brought a sense of finality. Her friends began mediating, arguing that everyone deserves a second chance. Some mentioned how Catherine had changed, remorseful, ready to try couples therapy. Others stressed that she had completely ended things with Michael, realizing it was nothing but a relic of the past. But I had learned the most important lesson. My value didn't depend on Catherine's validation, or anyone else's. The transformation I went through wasn't to win her back, but to win myself back. Her attempts at reconciliation, although sincere, came too late. I wasn't the same man she left behind, and there was no going back to what we were before. The final showdown happened during a dinner that Catherine insisted on to figure out our future. I chose a neutral restaurant, public enough to avoid any dramatic scenes. She arrived dressed to impress, with flawless makeup and that perfume I knew I loved. "Will, these months apart made me realize that I made the biggest mistake of my life," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Michael was just a distraction, a silly attempt to revive something that isn't there anymore. You are the man of my life." I listened patiently as she listed every reason why we should try again. She talked about our years together, plans for the future, how we could rebuild something even stronger. Her eyes shone with barely contained tears. "Catherine," I replied calmly, "I appreciate your honesty, but I need to be just as honest. There's no turning back for us. Not because you reconnected with Michael, but because this separation helped me truly figure out who I am." I explained that her asking for space had ironically been the best gift she could have given me. For the first time in years, I rediscovered my identity outside of being a husband. I grew in ways I never imagined possible. Her tears started to fall freely. "But I can change. We can grow together," she insisted. I shook my head gently. "What we had was special, but it's over. You followed your heart when you decided to chase after Michael. Now, I'm following mine by moving on." Catherine tried to argue, bringing up our happy moments, but her voice faded as she realized my unshakable resolve. Finally, after a long silence, she understood. It wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of a version of us that no longer existed. We said a brief, purposeful goodbye hug. As I watched her leave, I felt a mix of gratitude and freedom. The cycle had come full circle, and it was time to write a new chapter. This time, on my own. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. The end of my marriage taught me valuable lessons about self-love and personal growth. The initial pain of betrayal and abandonment turned into a catalyst for positive changes I would never have made if I'd stayed in the comfort zone of our relationship. I learned that reacting desperately when someone asks for space only reinforces their decision to leave. True strength is in accepting the situation and using that energy for self-improvement. When Catherine said she needed time, I gave her just that, and I used that time to rebuild myself. Most importantly, I realized that relationships end, but that doesn't mean you failed. Every experience shapes us, teaches us, and prepares us for the future. Catherine chose to revive her past with Michael, while I chose to create a new future for myself. The physical transformation was only an outward sign of a much deeper inner change. I rediscovered my passion for work, developed new hobbies, and built deeper relationships with friends and family. Therapy helped me recognize harmful patterns and develop a healthier mindset. Now, when I meet men going through similar situations, I share my story, not as a guide for revenge, but as an example of how a crisis can turn into an opportunity. The key isn't to try and save a relationship at any cost, but to save yourself. True self-love doesn't depend on someone else's validation. Sometimes you have to lose someone to find yourself. In the end, I thank Catherine, not for the end of our marriage, but for inadvertently giving me the chance to discover my true strength. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this.